Hierdie is sê dit soos dit is. This morning I'm talking to Mr. Moeletsi Mbeki. Good morning, Moeletsi.
Morning. Great to be here.
Yeah, what a privilege. Thank you for coming all the way from Johannesburg. Just a few words on you. You're the owner of Pomegranate Media.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it a bit later. You're a political analyst, chairman of the South African Institute of International Affairs, former political analyst for Nedbank. Just happened to be the brother of former President Thabo Mbeki, your older brother.
Yes, older brother.
And the son of Governor Mbeki.
Yes.
An intellectual and also a businessman from those days. We're going to talk about him, who was on trial with Mr. Nelson Mandela and spent many, many years on Robben Island with Mr. Nelson Mandela. So you've got a very rich history. And now something about you, Moeletsi, is something that I've picked up on the conversations we've had, on periodic conversations, that you, it's very difficult to drag you into discussions on the softer side, the emotions and on history, because you just want to move forward. But we need to spend a bit of time in your history, because that's what the people want to hear. You grew up in a little town in Transkei. That's where your father had a shop.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that name?
Duchwa.
Duchwa. That's right. So let's get into this thing. Your father was an activist, but something causes a person to become an activist. Just give us that history.
Okay, well, South Africa has a very long history. So when you're talking about families like my family who have a long history in South Africa, we can spend all day here and all week here talking about our history. Let me start in 1834, because that's a very important date in South Africa's history, modern history. 1834 was when Britain decided to abolish slavery in South Africa. The consequence of the decision to abolish slavery led to opposition by the Afrikaans community in the Cape Colony, who were opposed to the abolition of slavery. And that led to the Great Trek. So it's very important to understand, which ultimately ended up with the creation of the Boer republics in the Transvaal and in the Free State. So that's one very important part of South Africa's history. At the same time as slavery was abolished, there was a war between the British and the Xhosa people who lived in the Eastern Cape over the ownership of land. And so the British couldn't defeat the Xhosa people, so they decided to create allies amongst themselves. So they formed allies. It's called divide and rule. It's a very well-known method of Britain. So the ones who fought on their side, they then gave them British citizenship or citizenship. So they had a constitution, a Cape Constitution, which was passed by the British Parliament in 1853. And that's another turning point. So we have the abolition of slavery, which led to the emergence of the Boer republics. Then we have the Cape Constitution in 1853. According to that constitution, if you could write your name and you owned property worth £25, then you could vote. It had no color qualification in it. The only qualification was that you had to be able to write your name, and you have to be able to to own £25 worth of fixed property. So that is the background. Well, then in 1867 and then 1883, minerals were discovered in South Africa. So then a new crop of white people came to South Africa, which were the English-speaking mining group. The mining group wanted cheap labor to work on their mines. So they opposed the Cape Constitution because you can't exploit somebody who has a vote, because they decide who becomes the government. So the mining companies, which were led by Cecil Rhodes, a notorious gentleman called Cecil John Rhodes, they wanted to abolish the Cape vote. So the African people in the Cape then started to form political parties to oppose the abolition of the Cape vote for Africans. And the British government didn't support the mining companies. But after they discovered the gold and the diamonds, now Britain started to change its mind about the African vote. But so the British, when the Anglo-Boer War in the years after the Jameson raid, leading up to the Anglo-Boer War, the British led the Africans in the Cape to believe that they will extend the vote, the Cape vote. Once they defeat the Boer republics, they will extend it to the Boer republics. Right? But, of course, the British didn't keep their word. So they said, okay, we will leave it to the mining companies and to Jan Smuts and Louis Botha and the Boer who are running the former Boer republic to decide. So, of course, these two groups were not interested in keeping the vote for the African people or for the colored people, because the colored people also had a vote. So that is what led to the emergence of political activism, which my grandparents were involved in, and then my father subsequently, which led then to the creation of two very big, important organizations in our history. One was called the African People's Organization, which was set up by a colored guy. His parents had been slaves. His name was Dr. Abdurrahman. So he set up a party which was mainly supported by the colored population in the Cape. He set this up in 1904. Then the African set up another party called the African National Congress, which became which was set up in 1912. So that is the origin. So my father was born in 1910.
Yeah.
So he was born 2 years before the formation of the African National Congress.
Now, the decision that was taken to abolish or withdraw that right to vote from blacks, how did it take place? Because the blacks at no stage could vote for the change to deny them the vote. It must have been a very, very formidable political trick. How did it happen?
Well, it was the one of the tricks that the British played on the people of South Africa, and not just the African people, on all the people of South Africa.
They've been doing it all the time.
Yes,
but I'm still doing it.
Yes, I think they're still doing it. They're still collecting our gold and our diamonds and whatever. So what the British decided was to hold a convention in 1909, what they call the South Africa Convention, to decide on a new constitution for South Africa. But that convention excluded the colors, the Indians, and the Africans. So it was the British, the English-speaking white South Africans, the Afrikaners. They held that convention, and then they decided on a new constitution, which effectively outlawed the voting for the colored African Indian populations. So that's when our struggles, the big struggles of the black population now, if we include all these three groups together,
Yeah.
that's when they started, which then culminated after in 1994 in the Democracy Constitution, in the Constitution overriding the one that was agreed in 1909, which led to the Union of South Africa, to the creation of the Union of South Africa.
That you say is the cause of your father's political activism. But something, while he was conducting his business, his buyers were migrant workers.
The customers.
The customers, yeah.
Yes, you see, okay. The shop was in the villages just outside Duke, in the Transkei.
Yeah.
And most of the villagers, the men in those villages, worked in the mines. So they were the clients for our shop. So we sold to their families who were left behind.
Now, what the dynamics of them, these migrant workers, working on the mines here at the Witwatersrand, coming home, spending the money there, sending it back to their families. Just give us a bit of that dynamic. What your father picked up. What did he see there? What is that didn't sit well with him?
Well, most people were opposed to the migrant labor system because they wanted the families to go and live in the city where the men worked. But as you know, there was the pass system. And the British, in fact, there was a commission that the British held, a very long commission called the South African Native Affairs Commission, which sat for 2 years from 1903 to 1905. Remember, that's when the British were in control of all of South Africa now. So they decided that they will introduce this migrant labor system. So the families stay in the rural areas, the men go and work in the mines, which split up the family, which created many of the social problems that we have in South Africa today with the absent father amongst the African population. And this is one of the most important heritages, negative heritage of British rule. Many people don't understand this. The gender-based violence, one of its sources comes from the migrant labor system, the splitting up of the family. So the male member of the family is never there. He only comes home for Christmas. And that's what creates one of the gender-based violence that's so prevalent today in South Africa is one of the consequences of the migrant labor system.
And the breakup of the South African society, the root causes of that, which you say comes even from there, is a huge thing. That's a burden we're carrying. That is breaking. That is severely harming our society.
Yeah, but it has a long history.
It has got a long history.
It's not just the migrant labor amongst the Africans. Remember, the slaves, the children belonged to the slave owner. So he could break up the family of the slaves. So when you look at the families of South Africa amongst the colored and the Africans, you have this problem of absent father. And so the roots that you see, for example, of gang violence amongst the colored population, they have a long root going back to the breakup of the colored family as a result of slavery.
You know, in previous discussions you and I had, and I've mentioned it earlier, you just want to avoid the emotional stuff. But I tell you, the healing of the nation, the recognizing of where things come from plays an important part in healing. You need to talk about things. You don't, you know, if somebody asks me now, do you feel sorry for things? I say, if feeling sorry for something doesn't help me. We need to deal with today. But recognizing the things. But if you want to, before you need to recognize something, you need to understand it. So that is perhaps a discussion on another day. But we will feed you something that you can do it. Because you just want to move forward, you know.
No, I think it's a discussion we all should have in South Africa. Not just with me.
No, I understand.
Amongst all South Africans.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You're growing up in the house of this businessman cum activist. Just talk about that a bit. What was living with your family? What was it like?
Well, as I said, my parents were intellectuals. My father went to Fort Hare University. My mother trained as a teacher. So we were, and my father worked, set up publications. He worked for publications. So we had libraries at home. We had newspapers at home. We had magazines at home. From as far afield as the United States, like Ebony magazine, which was a black magazine in the United States. So we had a household. We had libraries. In fact, one of the novels I remember trying to read when I was about 10 or 11 was written by a famous Russian novelist called Maxim Gorky. So we had, big library at home and so yeah, it was.
Your father had to, because of what he was doing, and if you the activism in which he was involved was, I believe, and you must help me with that. That was what he did wrong. Was political expression, saying he say what you think. Well, influence people. That's what you do.
That wasn't wrong.
No.
But that's the right thing.
No, that's what he did, and that caused so much trouble, and it irritated the apartheid government of the time so much that in 1961 he had to go underground. Is that right?
Yes, the ANC set up a military wing.
Yeah.
After the ANC was banned after Sharpeville.
Yeah.
After the Sharpeville massacre, the ANC and the PAC were banned. And then the ANC, after a lot of discussion, decided that it had to undertake an armed struggle. So my father was one of the people who set up the military wing of the ANC, which is called Umkhonto weSizwe, which is a bit different from Jacob Zuma's party. But anyway, the original Umkhonto weSizwe. My father was part of the high command of Umkhonto weSizwe. Of course, that was an illegal activity, so they had to hide from the powers that be, and they were eventually caught, as you know, in I think July 1963. They were having a meeting in Rivonia. They had bought a house there, and they were having a secret meeting about their strategy for how to fight the apartheid regime. And then they were betrayed. I think there was a spy or something, either amongst themselves or anyway. The police arrested them, found them there. My father, Walter Sisulu, and various others, and they were tried and sentenced in 1964 to life imprisonment. And my father was in Robben Island prison until 1987. He was the first one to be released. and then Walter Sisulu, and then Nelson Mandela. So that is it.
But you were, can I call it, self-imposed exile because you went to school in 1958 in Lesotho. Do I have it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I went to school. I was sent to school by my parents
Yeah.
to Lesotho.
Why was that? Why did they do that?
Because Verwoerd was introducing Bantu education. So my parents didn't want us to, myself and my younger brother, my late younger brother, didn't want us to go through Bantu education. So we went to school in Lesotho, which did not have Bantu education. Remember, Lesotho then was a British protectorate, and their schooling system was not controlled by South Africa.
But you did come home from time to time from Lesotho.
Yes, until my father went underground, then it became too risky for me to come.
So when your father went, since your father went went underground in 96 to 1, until the time he was released in 87.
Yeah.
You've never saw him?
Yeah, I was in exile.
Yeah.
And he was in prison.
Yeah.
And I had left the country illegally without a passport. So I would have been arrested if I came back. Yeah.
Just tell me the process of leaving the country without a passport. How did you do that?
Well, I was already in Lesotho.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, Lesotho is in the middle of South Africa. I mean, somewhere you get.
Yes,
you couldn't just walk across the border.
No, yeah. There were ways in which all those things were organized. To leave, to come and go inside the country illegally.
How did you do that?
I wasn't in charge of it. The ANC was in charge of it.
But how did they help? What did you do? How did you get out of the country?
Well, I got a passport illegally in Lesotho.
We have to make a note of this and report that.
and so that enabled me to cross South Africa to Botswana. On this passport, which was kind of an illegal.
How old were you then when you?
I was 18.
18. Okay. So, fast forward to the 90s. Since you want to focus only on the future, we keep the emotional stuff and the history and the family history in your life for another conversation. But then we were now in the 90s and we're approaching CODESA, the CODESA phase.
Yeah.
Where were you when CODESA took place?
Well, I came from exile in 1990.
Yeah.
And I was employed by COSATU, the Trade Union Federation, the Congress of South African Trade Unions. And I was head of communications in COSATU because I had been a journalist in the United Kingdom and in Zimbabwe. So I was head of communication. So during the whole CODESA period, I was in COSATU. Now, COSATU was part of the negotiations behind the ANC. So the Central Committee of COSATU would sit for days on end, and I was a member of the Central Committee, being a head of the department, to get report back from Cyril Ramaphosa and the negotiating teams, Mac Maharaj, on what was being negotiated in CODESA, and then we made our own input as COSATU to those negotiations, and then they will be taken back to COSATU for negotiations and so on. So yes, I was.
If I almost said from today's perspective, but I'm not going to include from today's perspective because that in hindsight you can do a lot of things differently. But if you were to criticize or evaluate CODESA, what would you say?
Well, first, I think it was a good initiative, and we have to thank F.W. de Klerk for starting the process. Actually, P.W. did a little bit, tried, but F.W. de Klerk was the man behind who started CODESA by unbanning the ANC in releasing political prisoners. You remember his famous February 2nd speech,
1990.
1990. So that's when the whole process of
Yeah.
negotiation started. So it was a very important initiative to try and overcome the heritage of discrimination, which had started in 1904, as I indicated,
Yeah.
with that convention, which excluded the black people from the vote. So CODESA was aiming to introduce universal franchise. So it was a very good a good initiative. And the outcome, I think, has proven itself, which is the Constitution of South Africa. South Africa is at peace and has been at peace since 1994. So there's no civil war in South Africa. So CODESA and the Constitution of the Democratic Constitution of South Africa shows that it has had a positive outcome.
But they are among a certain black political institutions today huge criticism about the outcome of CODESA.
Yes, but that's
if you listen to them, what will you say?
No, but that's democracy. That's the whole point of democracy. It's not that we should all agree. It's that we have a right to disagree. And they have a right to disagree, those who think that not everything about CODESA was right. They have a right to disagree.
But if you were to evaluate today the outcome of CODESA from your point of view, thinking of where South Africa stands, was the eventual outcome of CODESA sufficient, taking us forward, or is it was something lacking there? Because
no, there was nothing lacking. CODESA outcome was a very good outcome for South Africa. The Constitution of South Africa is a good constitution for South Africa. People don't understand that a constitution and an economy are two different things. Many people think that CODESA should have addressed the issue of the economy of South Africa. No, CODESA was about the political equality of the people of South Africa, not the economy of South Africa. The economy of South Africa, according to the Constitution, is managed by an elected party that has the majority in parliament. It decides the economic policy. That's how democracy works. So many of the critics of CODESA don't understand what democracy is about. Democracy is about political management of the country and participation of the citizens in choosing a government. It's not about the economic system. The economic system and economic policy is decided by the party that gets elected and becomes the majority party in parliament. It then decides the economic policy. So if you think there's something wrong with the economic policy of South Africa during the last 30 years, you have to address it to the ANC, because they were the ones who had the power, who were elected to change the economy of South Africa if they wanted to change it. So it had nothing to. CODESA gave the pathway to manage how to manage the economy, and then the party that was in power managed the economy to suit itself. Essentially, that's how the ANC. So it's not the fault of the Constitution or the fault of CODESA. It's the fault of the ANC. If you are unhappy with the way our economy is being managed.
Well, there is the last 30 years we've been busy. That's the debate for 30 years. What to do about the economy. And there are vested interests in the economy, which is not bad. There must be vested interests in the economy. When you talk money and business, then there are vested interests. Of course, there must be. Those that want to destroy it has other vested interests. So here we are, and this is an area as a political analyst where you'll be on the spot this morning. So where are we now? Where do we find ourselves with this situation between the rich and the poor, between the thing that they call inequality, which exists? It's not that there isn't inequality. It is, how do you want to erase inequality? How do you deal with that? And this is the battle currently.
Yes, but the voters of South Africa gave the ANC the mandate to address the issues, the problems in the economy. Inequality is only one of the problems. There are many other problems.
Many.
But they were given the mandate. But instead of addressing those problems, the ANC essentially decided to focus on the African middle class, on building up the African middle class and improving the welfare of the African middle class, and then leaving the poor, just give them a little bit of charity, the so-called social grants, and didn't grow the economy because they diverted profit from the companies, from the private sector, through the tax system to go and build the African middle class in the public sector. So we now have this huge African middle class, which is actually not productive, but taxes the companies that produce the profit. So these companies cannot create jobs because now their profit gets taken away from them by the taxman, who then pay high salaries to this African civil service, the black public service that we have in this country. So, but that was the ANC's decision. It had nothing to do with CODESA. It was a decision of the ANC.
Absolutely. The fact is, the ANC introduced a huge number of policies, which they try to redistribute the wealth. And I think that's important. Let us talk about their redistribution policies. How to, and the one you mentioned is this bloated government service. You take money from taxpayers and pay that in terms of salaries to government officials. Now, when I was young, I worked for government. Our salaries could not compare with that of the private sector. That's changed.
Today,
that's changed.
The government salaries are higher than the private sector.
Much higher.
Which is unheard of in the world.
Yeah.
Because in every country, the private sector pays higher than the public sector. In South Africa, the public service pays higher than the private sector because of this black middle class that the ANC is building up. Because it's black middle class in the public sector, which is earning these big salaries.
My greatest competitors for my staff is no longer other businesses. It's government.
Yeah, absolutely.
I cannot compete with government, but they pay me. I pay twice. I pay tax. And then they steal my staff, which I've trained. With my tax.
Yeah.
With my tax.
But this is the wrong policies of the ANC. It's not anything to do with the constitution.
No.
It's the ANC policy.
No.
Now, this is why the population is now fed up with the wrong policies of the ANC. And the ANC has lost its majority because now the people realize that these are wrong policies for the country. They are not benefiting the country.
Now, the policies like black economic empowerment and employment equity, which is just a spin-off of black economic empowerment. Now, we all are not against black economic empowerment. I wish we could all have been properly looked well after. But the way they are busy with the redistribution on race What is your view on this?
No, it's not on the race. It's to the black middle class. People think that there's redistribution to the mass of black people. No. The redistribution that the ANC has implemented is to the black middle class. The black poor remain poor. If you go to the township down the road, you find the poor are as poor as they were before. If you go to the rural areas, you find the poor people. So there is no redistribution to the blacks. It's the redistribution to the middle class, to the African middle class that supports the ANC.
But if you were in the ANC and what you say is absolutely true, but if you were sitting in the ANC today, and if you were this ANC representative this morning, and I will say to you, sir, but your policies, you try to benefit the black middle class, you neglect 50% of the population are poor people, and at some point it's going to bite you. So what are you going to do about it? Because the $350 a month you pay to a household that doesn't have food, surely people can't be happy with that for too long. They want work, and you are interfering in business to achieve something for the benefit of a few, but you're neglecting these, and this is going to haunt you in the future. What are you going to do?
No, but the people are telling the ANC this. That's why they've stopped voting for it. The black people are telling this message to the ANC that you are destroying our country with your policies favoring the black middle class. That's why the ANC only got 40% of the vote. It's the black people themselves are saying. Now, the DA is keeping the ANC in power. Instead of letting the ANC go into opposition, the DA says, no, come back, my friend, stay in his government. So it is the DA that is now keeping the ANC. The black people are saying, we don't want you, your policies are wrong. The DA says, no, you keep your policies and let's carry on. Now, can you see the problem we're sitting with in this country?
But the DA will say that if we didn't do that, it would have driven the ANC into the hands of MK and EFF.
It won't have. The MK doesn't want the ANC. EFF doesn't like the ANC. They left. It wouldn't have driven the ANC to MK to the ANC.
But the EFF is just a spoiled child of the ANC. They've just left home for a while. He'll come back if the benefits are good. They come back.
It won't come back. It's the DA that is keeping the ANC in power, perpetuating these policies now.
Let's say the DA withdraws tomorrow. You don't think the ANC and the EFF will...
The government would collapse.
It will collapse. It will collapse. But
then we would have different new coalitions, or maybe a new election, and then we will have some new parties. Then we might have a better management of our economy than the mess that the ANC has created, and the DA is supporting this mess.
What is the thinking about BE now? Go a bit deeper into this thing, because you're sitting on this side and all companies saying, listen, ANC, you are interfering in the way we want to conduct our business. Now, I just want to ask you this, just your opinion. A company that says, I've got 10 employees and I want them to be white with beards. That's my staff.
Mm.
Somebody might say, yeah, but you're stupid. You lose out on fantastic people, which is not of your color, of your choice. He says, I know, but I want that. What will you tell such a company? That's your business. Didn't do it as you wish. Or will you say government interfere in that?
No. I will say the Constitution of South Africa is very clear. If you're running your private business, as long as you don't discriminate on the basis of race, any other discrimination you can do. But as long as you can't discriminate on the basis of race, it's legal to.
But this company that says I want my staff to be white is discriminating on the basis of...
No, that's illegal. against the Constitution.
Yeah, but the culture of a business, if a company says he's somewhere in the rural area and he says, this is what I want my staff to be. Now, that is the thing that the Constitution indeed says, but the businessman will say, I don't want this interference. Now, economic growth force people into economic growth. If the economy grow, you have no choice. Then you employ the best. You must.
Yeah.
You must. But in the absence of economic growth, you interfere. You want to interfere in the business of a guy. It's like me walking into your office and say, Mr. Mbeki, I want to conduct your business on a spreadsheet. So many of these colors. You won't like it. So just give me your view on this. Although I hear you say this is unconstitutional, but would you rather give a company the decision to say, I want to conduct my business the way I like?
No, the way the businessman, and two of us are both in business, we want to control our profit.
Yeah.
We want to control how we make profit. We don't care about whether the workers are black, white, green, or whatever. They must be productive and they must produce a profit. The problem we have in South Africa today is that when my company makes a profit or your company makes a profit, the government takes most of that profit through the tax system and gives it to the civil service. That is the problem. It's not race. It's that the government takes the profit so that I can't reinvest the profit to grow the economy. The profit is eaten up by the civil service.
Well, for the service, and then take a huge portion of that and pay that out to millions and millions of people who do not make a contribution to the economy because the economy doesn't grow.
Because
instead of having a low tax and 90% employment, you have 40% unemployment.
But that's why we have to ask the DA, next time, instead of having Moeletsi sitting across the table, bring the DA here and ask them, why are they propping up a government that is doing all this damage? Why are they propping it up?
They might say to...
don't answer for them. Let them answer for them.
No. Okay, not they might. They say.
Okay, tell me what they say.
I try to carry this message over very softly, but this is what they say. Is, well, if we didn't do that, there would have been a marriage coalition, call it what you want, between the ANC and the...
what proof do they have? They have no proof that there would have been such a marriage. It's just that it serves their own interests, the DA, to keep this status, this messed up economic policies of the ANC. The DA also benefit from this messed up economic policy. They talk, they want economic growth, but actually they don't want it. They are quite comfortable ruling the Western Cape and Tshwane municipality. They are quite comfortable with these ANC policies, which are destroying the economy of the country. So the DA is a culprit also. Don't believe their excuses. You see, they make excuses to justify what they are propping up, the wrong policies of the ANC.
I think what I hear is if they were sure that the ANC would not engage in this marriage with the ANC, there would have been a different arrangement. But how do you know? Because
the MK party hates the ANC.
Yeah.
The ANC has just expelled Jacob Zuma. So you think Jacob Zuma will come back and support the ANC?
But the EFF would have given the ANC enough.
No, it wouldn't have, because the ANC expelled Julius Malema.
But I mean, as I said, he's just the naughty son in the family. The thinking is the same. Although one must admit that the ANC is split between the moderates, the more to the right, free economy. Even Ramaphosa decides, realizing that if you introduce the policies towards the left, there won't be much left of South Africa. Or must we say, and I'm talking as from a DA point of view, okay, take your chances, do it, bugger up this thing, and the rand will be 100 rand and $1 in a
How
week.
does the DA know all this?
No, they don't know it,
I
but
don't
they say,
know.
they might
You
say,
don't know.
no, but they might say,
How
can
do-
we take that chance?
Oh, no, but they don't know it will be like, it might be the opposite. The rand might strengthen. You see, because they are propping up the ANC's policies and they're giving excuses for propping up the ANC's policies.
So what you say is let the ANC fail properly.
Yeah, let the ANC.
Well, I saw an
the ANC has failed. It has already failed.
Yeah, okay.
But the DA is propping it up. So now we have to ask the DA, why are you propping? It's not true that the ANC and MK party want to work together. They have just expelled the president of the MK party. So it's not true what the DA is, the excuse they are giving. So what is the real reason behind the DA propping up the ANC in government? They must give so then that's why I'm saying bring Helen Zille here and or Mr. Steenhuisen and don't accept excuses from them and them telling you lies. They have to give you the real reason. Why are they propping up the ANC when it is destroying, when its economic policies are destroying the country?
Well, I'm telling you what they say, but I
But
hear you
that's
when
not
they
the
say
truth.
you say that's not the truth.
That's
Okay,
not the truth.
okay. The last word on that, they might say taking that risk was too high, but you say nonsense.
It's nonsense. There's no such a risk.
Yeah.
Or it's a low risk. Let's put it this way. It's a low risk.
But if it's a 10% risk and it really goes wrong, because now, if you look at the vote in the last election, somebody might argue that those in favor of more socialist policies were 70% of the voters, and if you
which is
MK, EFA, and the ANC.
The ANC has never supported socialism. Never. Mandela made this very clear in the Rivonia trial, during the Rivonia trial. Mandela made it clear the ANC has never supported socialism. The ANC supports capitalism. So it's not true the ANC has any socialist
But do
policies.
you think there's a one segment of the ANC leans towards...
There's a Communist Party section, but there's a tiny minority inside the ANC. That's why they can't stand for it. They are afraid to stand for election because they would lose, because they don't have support. So there is no such a left wing that wants socialism in the ANC. No. These are scarecrows which are there to scare people like Gerhard, to frighten you to think there is some socialist. There's no socialism in the ANC.
Although the many of the policies that we're battling with can be seen as socialist.
No,
at least
they are not. So taking money from a private company and giving it to the civil servant is not socialism.
And taking the money from a private company and give it to the poor, even if it's
it's not socialism. It's done everywhere in the world. If you go to America, there's food stamps in America. If you go to England, you'll find poor people are given wealth.
So if that's not socialism, what is it then?
It's
just poor policy.
It's bad policy.
It's just bad policy.
Yes, it's bad policy. The ANC should be pursuing, ANC government, well, it's irrelevant now, but it should have been pursuing policies that led to job creation, not led to poverty creation. They pursued policies that led to poverty creation, and that's why they then have to prop up the poor. But that wasn't socialism. It was bad policies of the ANC.
How does the ANC snap out of this? Because
the ANC has been kicked out by the people, so forget the ANC. Forget the African people themselves who vote for the ANC have said these guys are useless. They're destroying our economy. They're destroying our country. So we vote against them. So they voted against. They stopped voting for them.
Okay. they can't snap out of this because those that benefit through the system are their voters.
No, their voters are not benefiting. That's why they vote against them.
No, I hear you. But the 40%, government officials and those that benefit from BE, these arrangements, are propping up the ANC. That's carrying it. So the ANC can't change it.
No. They are not enough to keep the ANC in government.
No, I hear.
It's the DA that is propping up the ANC.
But I'm saying the ANC need to look after the ANC, that party.
Yeah.
With their 40%, which will reduce to 30 and 20% eventually, and then it will disappear into something else.
Yeah.
The question is, how do they snap out of it? Because that's the people benefit from them, and they can't go back to them and say, listen, we're going to change the style of doing business. If you want to be a businessman, do it like Moeletsi Mbeki, start your own business.
Yeah.
Don't tap into somebody else's business.
Yeah.
But might just happen that won't end well for the DA.
Well, I hope it doesn't end well for the DA, because they are the ones now who are perpetuating this problem. The ANC would be out in opposition in the sticks if it were not for the DA propping it up.
So, how do you see the government of national unity playing out?
Well, that is propping up the failed policies of the ANC.
Well, it is currently, but at some point, do you see a future for that?
No, there's no future from this government of national unity, because it is perpetuating the problems of the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's no benefit to us as a country.
The president appoints a DA minister, then gives him a ANC deputy minister. He sits with the ANC DG, and the dynamics of running a business, if you can call a State Department a business, where your 2IC has a different view than you have, your head of admin has a different view from you have, and I say, now run that company.
And what's going to be the outcome? A complete disaster.
And I say,
or paralysis.
Well, paralysis.
Yes.
You know, I explain you sitting with a presentation made to you as the CEO, the minister. And he says he sees in this thing things that he doesn't agree with. Now, I say to him, Minister, now how are you going to deal with this? Call in your deputy minister. But he disagree with you.
Yeah.
And then call in your director general, but he disagree with you.
Yes.
And he said, but what are you going to do with this thing? He says, you know what? I'm just going to put it there because this is paralysis. How am I going to deal with this?
That's why I'm saying bring Steenhuisen here and ask him that question. How is he going to solve the problem?
Okay.
You see, because now all that this government of national unity is just maintaining the status quo, and it's paralysis, and it's taking our country nowhere, and it's keeping the old failed policies of the ANC. The DA is propping them up. So they are the culprit who has to explain why are they doing it.
And Moeletsi, thank you for this. This was a wonderful discussion. I would love to on a particular occasion talk about the history. History.
But that's the past. Now we have to move our country forward.
I will have to bring you back at one point to talk about the past, because the past is sticking in people's minds. And we need a lot of healing in the country and understanding certain things. We lived in two worlds. I mean, when I was a young child, and I'm not going back to the past now, when migrants, wine workers were influencing the world of your father in a little town in the Transkei, I was living on a farm as the son of a farmer, two different worlds. And we need to know about and understand those worlds. Thank you very much for this. It was wonderful to have you here, and this is not the last time.
Okay, thank you, Gerhard.
Thank you very much.
And thanks to your camera people and everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.